I need to let everyone know in this meeting that this meeting is now being broadcast live from our YouTube channel, and the meeting has started so that we know when to start broadcasting, and it will start at 10 o'clock exactly on the dot, and it's now 09:59. Good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock. Thank you all very much for joining this meeting. Karen.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I'll run through members' names and ask them to confirm their attendance. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah.
Councillor Oliver.
Yes, here, thank you.
Councillor Renner-Thompson.
Here.
Councillor Riddle.
Present.
Councillor Watson.
Councillor Watson is, I know, just having slight technical difficulties, but he is going to join as soon as he gets those rectified.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Councillor Wearmouth.
Present.
Do we have any other members on the call? No, that's it then, Chair. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Karen. And there's Councillor Watson now, so that's good. Okay, so we begin by looking at the minutes of the last meeting, which was on the 23rd of June. And there was another one on the 7th of July, and I think I signed those later, but I'll assume everyone is happy with those minutes and there are no queries coming from them. In that case, may I move on to Appendix A, which is, disclosure of member interests. Does anyone have any interest to declare? Okay, I don't see any hands, so we'll proceed. Number 4 is the report of the Executive Director of Finance. This is about our financial performance 2020 to 21, the position at the end of June. This is Appendix A. I'm going to ask Councillor Oliver to introduce the paper and then ask Chris Hand to add on to that. Right, Councillor Oliver, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to sort of take you on a quick canter through this paper, and then I'll ask Chris if he has anything else he feels that's sort of important that I've missed. So the paper is a review of the financial performance of the council for the first 3 months of the year, so running from April to June. We've actually had some updated figures for July, so I'll give a bit of an update later on that. So at the end of June, there was a projected overspend to the end of the financial year. So that's to the end of March 2021 of £9.3 million. And that figure has actually improved by £2 million in the following month. And at the end of July, it's at 7.3 million. On top of that, there's further funding expected from governments. I'm going to sort of just run through some key points. There's a detailed list of capital reprofiling. So fundamentally, mainly due to delays brought around by COVID, we've had to delay some capital programs, or there have been delays in capital programs. So that's being reprofiled on an ongoing basis as those changes sort of appear. The overall cost of COVID to the council to the end of June, or actually forecast from the end of June to the end of the year, is £37 million. But it's really important to stress that the actual net impact is significantly lower than that. And that's for 2 reasons largely. The first reason is that we've had significant extra government support to offset some of those costs. And then there are underspends in other services that will also offset some of those costs. So the net position is 9.3 or 7.3 at the end of July. We've received £22 million in direct sort of COVID grants, broad COVID grants that basically are given to offset extra costs. And on top of that, there are some other additional grants that have been received, which I'll also highlight shortly. A monthly return is being done to MHCLG by the council. The last one went in on Friday. All local authorities across the country are keeping government updated every month with their forecasts to the end of the year of the impact of COVID. We are hoping to see some additional income coming from government that may further reduce that £7.3 million figure as well. We've had £1.5 million extra for test and trace on top of the £22 million in general extra funding. We've had adult social care funding for infection control of £4.4 million. We've had another £11.4 million for transport infrastructure, which is largely not related to COVID. We've had £161,000 for active travel. And since this report was written, we've also had about another £1 million for education, mainly through for pupil premium support. In the first 4 months of this year, there's been significant capital investment, I think with which we can be very proud. £7.4 million invested in transport improvements, which has largely been spent on the roads. £1.5 million spent on improving or building leisure facilities. £10 million spent on improving and rebuilding schools, and £1 million spent on housing. So it's a really important point to stress that whilst we're dealing with the impact of COVID, business as usual is continuing, and some of the important projects that we've been promoting and sponsoring are continuing to be delivered. I'll do a quick canter through individual services, and these are the sort of basically areas where really an illustration of how COVID has impacted upon the delivery of council services and brought about extra costs. So these figures, I guess, go to make up the gross £37 million figure. We've had £5.7 million in extra costs for adult services, and that's largely been extra fees to care homes. Care homes have had an increase in their fees to help cope with COVID, and they've also had money spent on providing PPE. We've had an increase in purchase budgets of £4.1 million in children's services. About £3 million of that is on out-of-county placements. There's a longer-term ambition to try and offset that sort of ongoing cost with building more capacity within the county. We've got a £1.1 million shortfall in expected income from the Northumbria Clinical Commissioning Group. We've had £2.6 million in extra costs from home to school transport for within the special educational needs part of the education system, and we've had IT overspend of about £900,000, which is partly related to COVID and partly related to transitioning to better IT systems, which I think we'll all agree will help with the ongoing running of the business, running of the council going forward. We've had lost income from registrars, i.e. weddings income lost, and we've also had increased costs within the coroner's department. There's £5 million in the budget to support the county's leisure services, which obviously have been decimated as all the leisure centres run by Active Northumberlands have had to close. Now, we're happy to report that they are now reopening, and there's a restricted service, but most of them are operating again. So that £5 million figure is under sort of constant review, and there's been some extra resource supplied to help Active kind of remodel and revisit those figures, so we can try and minimise the extra cost between now and the end of the year. Neighbourhood Services has suffered £2.6 million worth of extra costs, about £600,000 in lost income and extra costs. There's about £1.6 million of extra cost forecast for waste collection, and that's really around the sort of working methods and social distancing. And we've forecasting extra costs of £1.2 million from operating the household waste recycling centres. Technical services, it's about £5.8 million. The key figures within that are about 1.4 million in terms of extra costs of delivering highways improvements, again around COVID restrictions. Forecast 1 million pounds in extra costs in delivering with the sort of winter services, and that will of course depend on what sort of winter we have weather-wise. And about 1.2 million pounds forecast in lost parking income. Within education, it just sort of falls within education and local services. There's £2 million for home to school transport, in addition to the 2.6 million I've mentioned in for the SEN provision. And then there's a £5.5 million put into the budget for dealing with a legal claim against Advance Northumberland. We're hoping that this will be at the upper end, and it could quite reasonably be significantly lower than that. So, but then it will be vigorously defended. But that's the value of the claim as it stands. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the value of the payment. So within that, we've got a significant issue, 9.3 million, which has fallen to 7.3 million. Overall, but there are, there's a long way to go. Where this report is 3 months; it's 1/4 of the way through the year. The finance teams and all of the teams who run each individual service area are working very hard. It's also worth mentioning, there has been, I think, significant performance in achieving the savings plan. Now, obviously, it's not all going to be achieved because COVID has hit. But I think, given the impact of COVID, I think that's to achieve as much of the original savings, the pre-COVID savings plan, as has been achieved, is a significant achievement. So I think in terms of areas where we can look for improvements, I think it will partly depend on what happens with local lockdowns, what happens with the national policy, and how social distancing regulations unravel. I think it'll partly depend on what happens with the Advance Northumberland claim. It'll partly depend on what happens with Active Northumberland and how the leisure services recover. I think we should be in a fairly good position reasonably shortly to understand more accurately to the end of the year what will happen with home to school transport, and because obviously schools are now back, and we should be able to sort of model that much more accurately than we could a month or so ago, when there was still uncertainty about the policies. And I think there's also a great deal of uncertainty around sort of income levels for things like parking, and we seem to be seeing a very buoyant tourism economy coming back very quickly. If that's the case, then I would expect parking income and things like that to rise. So that, I hope, is a reasonably comprehensive canter through. I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add, Chris, and then we'll take some questions.
Thank you. Chris.
Thank you, Chair. No, I think Councillor Oliver has covered the report very comprehensively, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Okay, Chris. Geoffrey Watson.
Nick, one of the things that I looked at and couldn't actually understand why there'd be an increase was in our waste recycling. 1.2 million in waste recycling. I can't see how that would have been affected too much by COVID, and they didn't open any longer. They, in fact, if anything, they kept it shorter, and the waste bins, the collection from homes, just being the same. Do you have an idea?
Yeah, there's two things there. I think maybe the 1.6 million figure is the waste collection. So that's the people coming around and collecting our recycling waste in our bin, normal household rubbish, and our green bins. And then the 1.2 million figure is the household waste recycling centres. And as I understand it, and Glenn will be able to answer this more thoroughly, but as I understand it, that is around, we basically generate income as part of the PFI contract from the recycling that goes on through that. The household waste recycling centres were closed for a time, and then they've been operating a more restricted service. So that income has fallen and is obviously still lower than it normally would be. I think that's a reasonable explanation, is it, Glenn?
Yeah, it is. Chris, do you want to add to that?
The only thing to add is we've experienced increased tonnage due to the kind of lockdown. More households at home permanently and generating more waste that's reflected in the cost as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I think we all took advantage of COVID to clear out our garages and things like that, didn't we?
certainly did. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I have to say that it's. I mean, could you just touch a little bit more on 2.1b, the projected overspend? Is that still the projected figure as it stands at the moment, or do you think? I know this report is about the end of June, but would you say that that's still going to be roughly the figure, or do you think we can probably see that?
Yeah, no, so that figure has fallen already. So I've got two reports sitting here in front of me. I've got this report, and then I've got the sort of mirror version for a month later to the end of July. And 2.1b at the end of July is 7.322 million versus 9.335 million at the end of June. So there's been a £2 million improvement. I think the position we're in at the moment is that there's a lot of work still to do, and there's some very good work being done by officers within individual departments to manage this and to manage their budgets under very trying circumstances. I think the overall position is that the impact is likely to be greater going forward, and that will depend on how central government support local authorities and so on. We're expecting a settlement, a 3-year settlement, which will probably come just before Christmas. So there'll be a lot of work going on doing budgets between now and Christmas. And the key assumption in those budgets, the absolutely key assumption in those budgets won't be known. So that'll be a sort of that'll be plugged in after all of the other cost-based work has been done between now and December. But I think we can probably be reasonably confident that we don't have a catastrophic position this year. We've got significant work to do looking at future years, and that work is well progressed at the moment, and I think every service head is taking part in that, and the finance team are doing some significant work on building that picture, so that we can present a budget in February that delivers what we want to deliver, but at the same time sensibly manages the council's finances.
Super. Well, thank you both very much. If I don't have any other questions, I would just say I think this report, if you look sort of from page 12, 13, 14, 15, look at all the work we're doing across the county. It is actually incredible, the programme that we're undertaking, from Newbiggin to Otterburn, Corbridge, Seaton Delaval, Linemouth, Amble, Blythe. Just looking at some of the headings, it is a fantastic programme of work. And it's fantastic that our staff are delivering on that. And I just want to take this opportunity to very quickly say again how much we all thoroughly thank our staff, our frontline staff, all our staff, for doing such a brilliant programme of work and keeping everything going despite the COVID issues. We are incredibly grateful to them for that. And so thank you for that. So I'll take you to the recommendations. Remember, this is the financial performance at the end of June 2020. The recommendations are that members are asked to note the report, to note the projected overspend of 9.335 million, to note the pressures currently identified, including the impact of COVID, to note that the council anticipates there will be further funding forthcoming in relation to the income that the council has lost as a result of COVID-19, to approve a net reprofiling of 67.370 million, and so on. F, to approve the new grants and amendment to the existing grants in Appendix A, and to note the progress on the delivery of the approved savings at Appendix B. Do I have a proposer? Proposed by Councillor Watson, seconded by Councillor Riddle. Okay, so are we all in favour of those proposals?
Agreed.
Show of hands. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much for that. We're now going to move on to Appendix B, which is, and I never really know how to say this word, appropriation. Is that correct?
Yes.
of Linden Walk Blythe from the general fund to the housing revenue account. I'm going to ask Councillor Riddle to briefly introduce this, and then I think Julie Emma, you're going to take us through the report. John.
Thank you, Chairman. Very short report here. What this is, we have some redundant buildings and land at Linden Walk in Blythe, and the proposal is to transfer that from the general fund to the housing revenue account. This would be to enable the council to develop 10 to 12 dementia-friendly homes, accommodation, and there's a perfect synergy here because it's actually almost next door to some of our own in-house existing residential social care. You know, dementia is a terrible thing, really. I wouldn't call it a disease, but a condition. And you know, part of our corporate plan and our vision is to support everyone as long as possible within their own homes, and this will add greatly to it. And I, you know, thoroughly commend the recommendation to Cabinet.
Thank you, Julie Emma McLaughlin.
Actually, Councillor Riddle has covered this extremely well, but I think I'll just add that this has been something that the council has identified as strategic importance. So it's a really excellent position for us to be in. So the proposed development site at the former offices at Linden Walk in Blythe means that we can look at extending the residential care that we have. So the synergies between what is there, it fits exactly with the corporate plan. So again, I can recommend this to you heartily.
Thank you, Julie Emma. Any questions for John or Julie Emma on this? No? Well, I would agree. I think it's a splendid initiative, and hopefully we'll get an update in maybe 6 months' time, see how it's all working and being developed. So the recommendation is to that Cabinet approve the transfer of Linden Walk Blythe from the general fund to the housing revenue account. Could I have a proposer?
Maybe John.
Proposed by Councillor Riddle, seconded by?
Happy to second.
Councillor Wearmouth. Are we all in favour? Could you show, please? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed for that. Now we come on to new capital proposals for the coming period. Now then, I am wondering who's going to take us through this one. I think it was going to be Neil, but then is it going to be Neil or is it going to be Kath?
Yes, Chair, I'm on the call, so happy to take you through that. So
thank you, Neil.
No problem. We have 5 items from Capital Strategy Group for consideration by Cabinet today, and if it's okay, I'll take them one at a time and then pause at the end of each one for Cabinet just to consider the decision.
Good.
The first one is in relation to the new build leisure centre at Berwick. As part of that project, a bid was put forward to the Football Foundation for funding for a 3G pitch as part of the scheme. I'm very pleased to report that that bid was successful. And the recommendation here is that we accept the grant from the Football Foundation and take that into the capital programme for the scheme. So there's no net impact on the council or cost here. It's purely absorbing that grant funding in. What I can just add is that the procurement exercise for the pitch has already taken place. It was slightly above the grant allocation, just under 700,000 for the build against the grant allocation of 500,000. But we have already agreed provision within the scheme for that. So again, there's no additional cost to the programme to absorb that in there. So that's the recommendation before Cabinet here.
Thank you. Any questions, queries on this one? No? Good news. Thank you, Neil.
Great. The second one is the DFE puts various capital bidding rounds forward at different points in time, and the council was invited to bid for expanded nursery provision for schools within Northumberland. Now, there were a number of criteria to be met that are set out in section 7.3 of the report, predominantly that this grant was being targeted at nursery places for disadvantaged children, along with another number of other criteria. The council worked with schools to invite expressions of interest, and 9 schools came forward, of which, following further discussion, 3 went through to the DFE for final bids and 2 were successful. One was Morpeth Road Primary, which is looking at additional facilities, a small studio classroom with toilet changing and kitchen facilities, and one at Cramington Village Primary School, which was a bespoke storytelling pod. Both schools are academies, so the grant funding comes to the council for us to passport through to the academies, but they take care of the build part of this, the design and build part of the project, but the council performs a monitoring role within that. So the proposal before you here is to accept the grant funding from the DFE and to give a recommendation to passport that onto those two academies and for us to undertake that monitoring role.
Thank you. Again, good news. Any questions? Okay, everyone's happy with that. Neil, thank you.
Smashing. The third one, Prudhoe Waterworld Play Park. The play area out the front of the leisure centre in Prudhoe has been closed since summer 2019 due to unsafe equipment that was beyond economic repair. We already had a sum in the capital programme of 100,000 to actually upgrade and bring this play area back into use. There has been discussion during the period with the town council, who have agreed that if the county council will undertake the refurb, they'll pick up the ongoing maintenance of the play area going forward, which is good for all parties really as an outcome. So this proposal is coming forward to ask us to approve funding to actually undertake that. It will involve replacement play equipment for the elements that are broken, some installation of new equipment and replacement of the wet paw safety surface within the park. The procurement exercise has actually come up with a cost of 86,000, which is under the 100,000 that we had earmarked for this. So again, we're just looking for approval from Cabinet to go forward with it, and then we'll link up with the Town Council to actually hand over the ongoing maintenance to them from that point.
Okay, thank you, Neil. Nick, Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, just not a question, really, more of a comment. I mean, I think that this is I know this play park. I used to take my kids to Prudhoe Waterworld swimming many years ago, and it was a really good play park. But it's become, well, it's closed now. It's become unsafe, and it wasn't well maintained over many years. And I think doing this refurbishment will be a really important project, and it brings all of that together. People can take their children swimming, they can use the play park, and councillors Stewart and Stowe have been championing this project. I know it's very important to the local community, but I think handing it over to the town council will be a smart move, because actually if it has local control and local management and local maintenance, it's bound to be done well, because they're looking after their own facility. And so I think it's a really good project.
Thank you very much. Councillor Watson.
Can I just, who owned it and let it go into disrepair in the first place? I'm not against this, but I'm just trying to get it clarified in my head, because lots of people have play parks, like parish councils that I know, who struggle to keep them up. Could they take a lead from this and just say, well, we'll let it go down and then we'll close it, and then the council will come in and do it for us? I'm not trying to be a killjoy. I'm just trying to be realistic here. Can someone tell me who owned the part of
I think it was a council facility, and we're talking about over a decade or more that it's deteriorated. And I think, I absolutely understand your point, but if I was, in a local community, it's a highly risky strategy to deliberately let it go and then hope that somebody might at some point in the future come in and save it. So I think probably it's understandable, but it's happened now. It's happened over a long period of time, and it is a really important facility in Prudhoe.
Good. Okay. Yes, Councillor Riddle.
Yeah, I think the history of this is it used to be Tynedale District Council years and years ago. Then it was part of the leisure thing for a number of years before it all transferred to the county. I just want to make the point that really I think this is actually very good value for money. I've put, I think, 30,000 over the years into a small play park at Bellingham, out of my local members' small scheme. And the amount of equipment that's here, and actually it's under budget, I think. So, it's really good news, and I'm sure it will be very well used. It's in an excellent location.
Okay, that's really helpful. Without messing up the agenda, Neil, I just wonder if we look at the next item, which is the decision that was made to go ahead with these playground improvements, which was a decision taken by the Executive Director of Place. Has that, presumably, I need to report that to the Cabinet, but is that the same area that we're actually talking about now, Neil?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Chair. That's correct.
Okay. So may I just blend this one in quickly? Item 7 is just to report to Cabinet that under Rule 2.5 of Finance and Contract Rules, this decision of the leader to agree the urgency of this matter is now reported to Cabinet for information. Can I just ask for a quick vote on that one, please, as we're on the subject? Would anyone like to propose that, please? Thank you, Councillor Renner-Thompson, seconded by Councillor Oliver. Are you all in favour of accepting that under item 7? Show, please. Okay, thank you very much. Right, so that's item 7 dealt with under the heading that we're talking about now, and both killing two birds with one stone, or two play areas with one heading. Right, Neil, carry on, please. The next one.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yep, so the council has an extensive car parks improvement programme, and as part of a parking study, it's been determined that demand for parking at Morpeth Railway Station is high and we're struggling with capacity there. So the recommendation here is that there are 2 possible sites that have been identified to increase capacity at the station. One on the north side, on a site that was formerly used as a railway siding, which could accommodate potentially up to 80 parking spaces, and one on the south side adjacent to the council's existing car park, which could have an additional 18 spaces. The proposal is simply at this stage to ask for some funds to be released from the council's programme to do design work on those 2 areas and to check out the art of the possible. So it's been estimated around about £25,000 for the northern site and £10,000 for the southern site to have a look at whether they could actually be taken forward as viable options. If they did turn into viable schemes, they would come back through Capital Strategy Group and back through Cabinet for full approval for the build programmes on those. So it's just design you're approving at this stage.
Yeah, thank you, Neil. I think it's very important that as an integral first step in any work that we do here, that we include facilities for cycling and walking, storage of cycles and so on and so forth. And also, whilst there is a bus service of a kind, it's not well used or well known by many from sort of centre of Morpeth up to the train station. So we must try and get that put right if we can as well, and look at that too. So it's not just about parking for cars, it's about looking at that obviously, but also how might we be able to improve public transport to the station, but also how can we look at facilities to make it easier to walk or to cycle to the station and leave their cycles there all day. So if that could be included within the brief, please, Neil, I'd be grateful.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on to Councillor Wearmouth and then Councillor Riddle.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So just really to welcome that this work's being done. I know that it's very challenging to get release of land from Network Rail for projects like this, and so it's great progress for Morpeth as a town. Later on today, I'm actually attending the official reopening of Morpeth Station after a refurbishment that was in part funded by the County Council. And we're also seeing increased services. I think it's around about 100% increased services over a couple of years at Morpeth Station. It's really important that we get to see additional parking, improved cycling and walking, most definitely, and better bus services, because otherwise we risk losing those additional services, and they're really critical for this county, not just Morpeth as a town set alone. There's people that come from right across the county to get into Newcastle, into London and elsewhere.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'd agree with that. And I'd also pay tribute to Greater Morpeth Development Trust for the work they've done at the station building, which is absolutely wonderful. And also to SENRUG, the South East Northumberland Rail Users Group, with whom we've been working very closely on this issue. Without their support and commitment, we would have found it much more difficult. So we've seen some really good partnership working at the station. John Riddle. John, you're on mute.
Sorry, yes. Echo what Councillor Wearmouth's comments there. You know, we have done quite a lot to try and improve facilities at lots of stations throughout the county with car parking. You know, I just wonder what can be done to encourage Network Rail to look on this sort of thing favourably, because they haven't really got a good track record of working with us. They're normally pretty slow and, dare I say, well, put it this way, not always the most amenable to suggestions.
Yeah, well, if I may, Neil, I can say that I think the discussions and dialogue with them has been actually very good on this. I think they want to see this station and the improved and more frequent services that Councillor Wearmouth mentioned. They want to see the station really expand. And so I think they've actually been very helpful. So long may that continue. Neil, I don't know whether you wanted to add to that.
No, I would just echo that, Glenn. I mean, the vibes I've got from the team who've been dealing with them are that there has been positive interaction about this, and we wouldn't necessarily be progressing to this stage if we thought we were pouring money down the drain on this one. So, yes, I mean, there is a degree of positivity on an outcome here if it stacks up once we've done that design work.
Okay, yes, Councillor Riddle again.
Yeah, I'll just come back on that then and say that, you know, I'm very pleased to hear that, but that hasn't always been the attitude they've taken in the past. So, you know, I'm pleased that that is what's happening. Thank you.
Yeah, good, excellent, thanks. Okay, Neil, the next one.
Yeah, so this is the last one. This is a Department for Education grant scheme again for rural gigabit connectivity, which is broadly getting ultra high speed broadband into rural areas. So the council's education teams worked with the DFE to come up with a list of 18 primary schools who are going to be put through this programme on 2 tranches. Again, all we're asking from Cabinet here is to accept funding. There won't be any cost to the council for this. It's entirely funded by the DFE. And at the minute, we've got a provisional figure of 537,000. If following the surveys and kind of design of the implementation of this, the costs increase, the DFE fund that increase. So there is any risk to the council here. I mean, the one little positive benefit, or not little, one rather large positive benefit out of this is it will get the ultra fast connection into communities as well as the schools themselves, which can make it easier to run for businesses and other surrounding facilities to run into that cable and once it's into that area. So again, there's a wider benefit from this to more council services and more aspects to the community as well. But broadly at this stage, we just need to accept this grant in and get cracking on this programme.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Riddle, then Councillor Oliver, and then Councillor Bennett-Thompson. Yeah, Councillor Riddle.
Naturally, you know, welcome this funding that's come in. I am a little surprised. I know they set the criteria, not the county council, but I am a little surprised that, you know, when I represent the most biggest rural area of any one councillor in England, that I've only got one school, Kielder, that's actually fitted their criteria. You know, I don't know quite what the criteria was. I'm very pleased we're getting this. But, you know, there's lots of very small villages in my area that haven't got good rural connectivity with schools.
Well, perhaps if I may barge in, Councillor Oliver may be able to answer that one.
Yes, I mean, I can't answer it very specifically, but basically the criteria were set by Openreach. So they modelled, and this was a sort of trial project that not many councils benefited from. So we did very well to be included in this, and the original tranche then got expanded to an extended tranche, which was, yeah, we got another 7 schools. And looking down this list, some of them are clearly what we would not define as rural, but the DEFRA definition of rural and what the man on the Clapham omnibus might describe as rural are probably 2 different things. But I think on a positive note, Kielder School is the most rural school. So to get it into the most rural school in the second tranche is a real positive, because the cost of delivery to a place like Kielder, I mean, we've both had discussions with the Kielder Trust, John, and they are, it is really, really expensive. So this is a really positive project. It has benefits both within education, which I'm sure Guy might mention, in terms of delivery of services within schools that otherwise can't be delivered without decent broadband, but it also has a wider benefit, allowing houses and local businesses to get connected, and is only one part of a significant improvement we're making to rural broadband. We've got the LFFN project, which is £12 million. We've got the Borderlands gigabit voucher project. We're tapping into the national project. We had a meeting yesterday with some private providers to expand rural delivery and accelerate it. And so, and then we've also got significant amounts of our own budgets put aside for rural broadband delivery. So together, it's another part of a pretty complex jigsaw, but it is delivering improved connectivity right across our county.
Okay, thank you. Did you want anything else?
No.
No. Okay. Councillor Renner-Thompson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'll just reiterate the comments made by the other members about welcoming this funding. I mean, there is a lot of schools that we're getting this money for, and if the last 3 months have taught us anything, is how important internet connectivity is. I mean, I've already dropped out this meeting twice, so and learning is good. There's going to be more and more learning comes down the fibre network as we go forward. So it's a resource not just for teachers and staff members, but also for children. And I hope that we can learn from, doing two tranches of schools, and perhaps in the future hope to add some more in of our own, because this is something that's not going to go away. The need for high-speed internet.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's probably just worth mentioning the LFFN project, which is the £12 million project I mentioned, is that actually is connecting public buildings. I think this figure might be wrong, but I think about 237 public buildings across the county, and most of those, or many of those, are schools. So once that LFFN project is complete, then we should find that we can deliver sort of equitable standards of connectivity to all schools.
Okay, good. So any other questions on this particular item? Neil, thank you very much for presenting that. I'm really sorry to say I'm going to have to read out quite a lot of stuff here, but I'll do it as quickly as I can. So Cabinet is asked to, under 1, the Berwick Leisure Centre, to accept the grant award of £500,000 from the Football Foundation and approve an increase in the project's overall budget provision from 22.647 million to 23.147 million. Secondly, the Schools Nurseries Capital Grant Fund to accept the grant award of 370,922 from DFE and amend the Council's capital programme accordingly to allow the creation of the additional nursery places at Morpeth Road Primary and Cramlington Village Primary. Note that both successful applications are for academies, and therefore the projects will be delivered by the schools themselves, with the Council performing a monitoring role and in turn providing grants to the schools. Thirdly, for the Prudhoe Water World Play Park, to approve the proposals and associated budget requirement of 86,000 to be met from the Prudhoe Town Council Play Park provision in the approved capital programme for 2021. Fourthly, for the car parking improvements, to accept the proposal and accept a budget of 35,000 to enable the initial work required to provide additional parking at Morpeth Station to be met from the existing car parking provision within the approved capital programme 20 to 21 brackets, and to look at those issues that we talked about before, please, around cycling and walking and public transport. Finally, the Rural Gigabit Connectivity Schools Programme to accept the grant award from the DFE for 537,000 and to approve the associated budget requirements for 2021 capital programme to connect the 18 private primary schools to the ultra-fast gigabit capable connection. May I have a proposer for those? Proposed by Councillor Wearmouth. May I have a seconder? Councillor Renner-Thompson, thank you. Can you show if you are in favour of all of those? Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Neil, for your help with that one. We've covered item 7 and taken the appropriate vote on that. Urgent business is next, and I've not been advised of any. If you turn to the agenda on page 4, you will see that number 9 is exclusion of the press and public, and it gives the reason why I'm now going to ask if I may ask that the live stream is finished at this point, and we move into a session now which excludes the press and public for the reasons that are outlined under 9 on page 4. May I have a proposer? Councillor Oliver and seconded by Councillor Watson. Are you in favour of moving to the closed session? Thank you. So may I thank anyone who's joined the live stream. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again.